Sports and Entertainment Symposium. I am the moderator for this next panel. This panel is the Music Business 101, and we are, again, fortunate to have some really great panelists, esteemed personnel who've seen a lot, done a lot, and are probably responsible for some of the records that you know and love. So I will allow each one of these panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll get into this great discussion. So we'll start with the lady on the panel, Ms. Fleming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naya Fleming. I'm currently working as an A&R coordinator at Def Jam Recordings.
So we'll move over to Mr. Riddick Tynes.
Hey, I'm Khris Riddick Tynes. I'm a producer and a songwriter, and I'm half of the production duo, The Rascals.
And Mr. Jackson.
How you doing, guys? I'm James Jackson. I'm a music publisher by trade, songwriters, producers, and arrangers' best friend.
And Mr. Hurt has just joined us. If you would just introduce yourself and kind of tell us where you are in your current position.
Oh, he's muted.
Unmute yourself, brother.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that, guys. My name is Dimitri Hurt. I'm an attorney in Los Angeles, and I work for a talent manager, production company. We do a little bit of everything.
Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your lives and just blessing us with this game that we are about to receive. So let's just start off. This is a very open question. Anyone can jump right in. So how do you best describe what the term music business, what does that really mean?
Well, for me, this is James Jackson. For me, I'll take it, it's about the business. It all begins with a song. So that's the music part, but once that song is created, it's all about the business. It's about, for me, it's about title registering your copyright, copyright registering it, making sure that you have a good agreement with your collaborators, so there's no back end interruptions. And I see some heads nodding on this panel because they've probably been through it. So I believe that the product of music business first. So it all begins with a song.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, music business to me is literally just that, it's business. Like the song itself is literally just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's so much that goes into it, whether it's like clearances or samples, agreements, terms, and a whole bunch of forms, and just going back and forth between with one end goal in mind, which is like to get this amazing record out in this, that, and the third. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's the business of music. I think a lot of times as creatives, especially early on, till you get smacked with reality from either having a conflict with a co-writer or a label or whatever the case may be, that, it's a business and there's terms and conditions and there's give and take and nothing's free and no one's just going to give you money without something in return, and I think the sooner you understand that, the easier your, journey will be throughout this industry.
Yeah, definitely. I would just piggyback off of that. It's much more than the actual music, way more than just the actual music. And I agree with my colleagues on this one.
Just hearing you talk about the business of music makes me think about all of the turmoil, all of the arguments I'm privy to. Hypothetical. You have a song that several people go in, write, compose, record, produce, and now there's a finished product. And one of the people who contributed is also the recording artist. The recording artist then decides to put the record out, but without having any real ingenuity back there. It's just kind of set out there online, hoping that somebody would discover it. A couple years go by, and now the writers, the contributors want to take this song and cut it on an artist who's now signed to a major label. But the other contributor, who was also the artist, does not want the song to go. What type of advice would you give to the contributors there who feel like they should be able to put that song or cut that song on this new artist?
My advice, or James, did you want to go first?
No. I was actually. I mean, this is real world. Which the question that he posed, it happens all the time, you know. But go ahead, Khris.
I mean, my thing is, if it's an artist that wasn't getting any traction and he threw it out on YouTube and it was Torrance, you know my personality. I'm like, we're gonna get the check, so we're gonna cut it on Beyonce, and that's just what it's gonna be. Because at the end of the day, it's like I'd rather have 20%, 10, 15% of a hit than 100% of nothing, you know? And if the artist that put it out that was also a co-writer, it's like, okay, it's not doing any traction for you, but if we have a shot here, then why not do it? I just don't see the pushback. I mean, I've had that happen a couple of times. One time we did a record with somebody, and the artist, you know, I want to keep them on myself. They want to put another artist on the feature and replace the original songwriter on there. And, you know, they were fighting tooth and nail not to get put on the to keep the original vocal on the song. But I think once they kind of understood the real world ramifications of it, like, well, if X artist sings it, we're gonna make more money. You know, they woke up to their senses. So that's my opinion.
I think to piggyback on what Khris just said, there are real world examples. Everyone knows Candy from Escape. She's a great songwriter, and she's a damn good artist too. So, she's written tons of songs for other people that she could have easily recorded herself. But if you've ever heard her talk, you know she's about that bag too, like Khris. And it's about getting that money. And if Destiny Child or Beyonce wants to cut your record, you know that launching pad has a whole lot further reach than you, if you're a wise person. But it goes back to the original question that this is a business. And songwriters, producers, arrangers, artists, if they approach it from that point of view, you're still going to have that emotional attachment because it's intellectual property. It was birthed in their mind, and if they're artists, they performed on it, so they may have an apprehension about giving it up. But cooler heads generally prevail when money's involved. And a guy like Khris or any other songwriter producer who may be involved, they have partners. They have a publisher. Hey, look, we have a vested interest in the title, so we have a better opportunity for it, and so that's usually what wins. But this is, if I could just continue, I know I said don't talk too long, but this is an important point right here. The age of me, the whole artist wanting to cut the record, they become the songwriter. There used to be a time when there was just pure songwriters, and they wrote the songs and they passed the songs on and the artists cut them. And then all of a sudden, in the 60s, Joni Mitchell, and, we entered the age of me and all of hey, I do everything. I songwrite, I produce everything too, And so, back in the days, I'm from Detroit originally, when, one song would be cut on 20 different artists, and you rarely see that these days. So I just wanted to add that two pieces in because, again, it all begins with a song.
And to piggyback off of James again, not to hog up everything, but sometimes with those situations, you pick your battles, right? Like given a right, like I sent out a couple tracks for a big artist to get written to. He liked the track and wanted some top line on it, so sent it out. Top line songwriting on top of it. And I the songwriter was like, "Yo, I want the track for my song, for my stuff," and I'm like, He's like, I wrote a whole song. I want to put it on my project. But this writer, I believe, is has a huge following that I think is going to blow up as an artist and as a songwriter. So for me, it's like, okay, I'll do you a service. I'll reproduce the track for you as a songwriter / artist, and then we'll keep the original joint for the bigger artist, and everybody's happy. Because, you look at relationships like Neo and Stargate. Like Stargate, if they wouldn't have did So Sick of Love Songs, who knows if they would have got to the left, right? So like for Beyonce. So, you just kind of pick and choose your battles, give a little bit to take a little bit. And once again, that's bringing it back to business, right? Like doing good business.
Yeah, I agree. A good friend of mine, they actually told me about the exact same scenario that had happened to them. I was just like, yeah, at the time, they were just starting out, young artists, and when they found out that, I think it was Motown, had, heard their song and loved it and wanted it for themselves, but, they're artists just starting out, so they didn't entirely know what all of that would entail of exactly. They're like, no, it's my song. I got to keep it for myself, and this is my baby. I birthed this. This is mine. Not knowing and later finding out that it would have been more beneficial to them to just give the record, because money make the world go round, and everybody's just trying to cut a check at the end of the day. And you could always write more songs, potentially better songs for yourself to keep. So I just wanted to throw that in there because especially along my career, which is always a learning process, I'm still learning that as well.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Hurt, did you want to add anything before I move on?
No, I think we should move to the next question.
Okay.
They got it. They nailed it.
So just to kind of round that piece out. So same scenario, the artist who's part contributor is telling everyone, no, you cannot move forward. So from a business standpoint, what type of recourse would you advise the other songwriter and contributors? They want to move forward, but just one person is saying, you can't use my song, even though that person probably has the least amount of contribution in the entire body of work.
For me, that's why I'm not a big fan of having so many people involved, and you also need to know who you're working with. This has only happened a few times, but it in fact just happened. We're actually in the middle of a pretty big issue, to be honest, with one of my clients. And it all could have been handled if everyone got together originally. In theory, you're supposed to try to knock out song split sheets as soon as possible. That's what you're supposed to do. It's just not real. I don't think I've ever seen it where people are in the studio and they bust out split sheets and start filling them out. I've been in a lot of studios, but that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. Khris, what you got?
I will say this, and it's not to bring, I want to say this right because I'm on record, but it's not to bring a racial aspect into it. I don't want to make it about race, but when I did Nashville sessions, before you walk in, we're going to split it 25% before everybody in the room. And it's like, okay. It's like, okay, cool. It's like, all right, cool. 4 of us in the front, and I'm cool. And I came up under Babyface, and that's how we do it. It's called Nashville splits. Everybody just split it 3 ways, 4 ways, whatever, and everybody's happy. And more hip hop stuff, and I also think it goes through more hands with rap, hip hop, and R&B. Because I'll start a track, and then maybe the artist will have their producer add another part. Let's just say I don't want to bring Kanye into it because but early Kanye stuff, and even Kanye stuff now. You do a Kanye West record, you might do a track. It might go to Hit Boy to do another verse. It might go to S1 to do a part. It might come all the way back to Rick Rubin, and next thing you know, you got Mike Dean on it. So now you got 6 producers, and you know, every producer feels a type of way because they didn't know other producers were involved, or they felt like their part was the only part, or their part was the biggest part. Well, my part on Highest in the Room, not Highest in the Room, what's the Sicko Mode came in, that's the shit that everybody liked. That's the hit. So now I want 50%. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, I tend to see that more in that, but I take that Nashville approach and I say, hey, let's just split it. You know, it's 100% of the song. If it's 5 of us, everybody take 20%. We all happy. You know, if it's a hit, we all buy houses and, you know, and get to go to sleep at night with money in the bank. So that's my viewpoint on it. And I'm trying to push that more with our writers. Like because sometimes when you try to have those conversations in the real world, you know, real world experiences, people kind of get offended by it, right? It's like, it's almost like, yeah, you put on a mask, you know, that kind of like offensive. People, I ain't got no COVID. Like, we just want to be safe. Let's just do a split now, so everybody can be safe and know what they got, and we can keep on working.
Well, I think it goes back to, you know, what I always say, you know, if you around me for 5 minutes, you're gonna get tired of hearing it. It all begins with a song. So the splits are, you know, what the song are made of, you know, like, what did you contribute? And the whole Nashville splits, as they call it, I mean, that's a industry standard. The song information sheet is going to follow the song for the rest of his life. It's like the birth certificate. And so these are things that I preach all the time, you know, and it's what I'm about. I tell my songwriters, my producers, my artists, hey, you don't leave a room until the splits are confirmed, especially if I'm paying for a session. You know, you come in my studio, that's what I expect. And but we're going to graduate. You're going to see a lot of changes coming up. In 2021, you're going to see an awful lot of changes. And it's going to be due to the Mechanical Licensing Collective. You're going to see people really focusing in and getting laser focused, because the attempt is to get people paid better. You know, the history of our business has been notorious for not doing that. And so you're seeing more and more companies, technology is really focused in on making sure that splits are correct, you know, because that thing you talk about, a Kanye record, it ain't, you know, Trevor Lawrence or Dr. Dre or anybody who's touched a record that had already been produced. Now you're cutting it up again. And if I'm a publisher sitting over here, I'm going, look, no, that title, I got 25%. And just because you put Dre and Trevor on the record, my stuff doesn't get diluted. You know, if I'm sitting over here as a publisher and I'm, you know, so those types, that's a whole other issue. So there you go. It's a beautiful day in hip hop.
Yeah, that's just on writing. Then with the producers, there's always secret, or I almost started cussing, I'm sorry. There's always random secret producers that pop up. Oh yeah, my homie such and such touched it. Oh, and so. And then that's when it starts getting like, bruh, what? I asked you before you came in here, did you make this beat yourself? And now we're not talking about samples. I'm talking about their homies and it jams stuff up, and now they all want different. It can get messy. So,
and that's why you see, you know, Chad and Pharrell, they stuck together. It was Chad, Pharrell, the artists. Those are the writers on the songs. Look up those records: Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Jay-Z, all the joints that they did that were mega hits. It was just them. You know, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, Babyface and L.A. Reid. It wasn't like 25 writers on the records. Like it was, right. You know, 3, 4. Usually the artist, maybe another co-writer, you know, and, you know, the two of them. And it kept it clean, I think, you know. But I think also just because everybody's starting to see the value in publishing, everybody wants a piece. I mean, I've seen situations where managers are like, yeah, bro, we're going to give me 5%.
That's not new. I mean, you know, we could boomerang it back. I mean, I represent the BB King Trust, and I deal with all of his copyrights. And you know, the Bahari family from ABC Records, who launched him initially. You know, I'm going through the process right now of terminating, you know, a couple hundred copyrights because I'm trying to get the trust back. You know, some of the U.S. interest in some of those titles that they haven't enjoyed for 50 years. But that's not new, you know. Look, people know that there's money in music. You know, the product, you know, music is the wine. you know, music is the wine, and there's a million different bottles, and every time a new bottle pops up, you know, they try to dilute the wine, but the wine still got the flavor. It's got the taste. And if you're a songwriter, you know, you have to do everything you can to protect that whole aspect that Dimitri was talking about producers popping up. You know, there's only so many points.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, you know, especially in regards to like hip hop and R&B. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. I know, like, from my experience just working, like, we would, even after, you know, songs would be released and stuff, so many producers and background vocalists and instrumentalists and people that nobody has ever heard of just pop up out of the blue, and we got to go through and edit the whole system again, and it's just, it gets dicey. But I am definitely a firm believer in just making sure that you have all of that situated out beforehand. Like James said, preferably while you're in the studio, like before you leave, like make sure you get everybody's information just so that there's no confusion, everybody's on the same page. And yeah, it's definitely important.
Great points here. But keeping on task with the business thing, I have seen that most artists don't realize that they're actually part owners or the sole owner sometimes of a small business. So much to the fact that I see people make records, whether they took the beat off the internet or other homeboy made the beat, they use their microphone and their computer and they make a song, they put it up on YouTube, they use TuneCore, and if the song makes $20, they don't believe they owe anybody, which doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. So with that in mind, what type of advice would you give to a upstarting artist or an upstarting music business to really help them understand that it's, number one, a business, and number two, that you have to put business protocols in place and pay people along the way?
I would definitely just say, first and foremost, make sure that, especially for artists who are like taking beats off of the internet or anywhere like that, how about you reach out to, you know, the people you're taking these beats from, or at least show on a record that, you know, you tried or attempted, even if they don't respond. But like something as simple as reaching out saying, hey, I really mess with this beat. I think you're a dope person. How about, you know, we connect and talk more, because I really want to use this for this, that, and the third. Just developing and showing them that you have a good character or the decency to reach out and let them know. It definitely paves the way for, you know, you guys to work more and potentially to your benefit in the future. So I'm personally a firm believer in, like, you know, reaching out to people, whoever it is that you want to use in regards to helping to develop your project, and making sure that you develop that relationship and that connection, because it can and it will definitely go a long way.
Just to piggyback off of her, I think that the relationship aspect of the game is extremely important. It's like credit, like, you know, like your reputation and your, you know, it's like credit, like a credit card. You mess up your credit, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car, you can't get a loan, you can't get anything. You know, you screwed. I don't know. I mean, everybody's in law school, so you guys should be old enough to understand that, right? Like it's like credit. So if you do good business and your reputation is high, I mean, it's almost like a golden shield around you, where even if people try to, you know, talk ish on your name or whatever, so people like, nah, I know, you know, I know Khris, I know James, I know Dimitri, like, no, that don't even sound right. So you definitely want to always reach out and make sure that you cover all bases, because people look at that. Integrity is a really important part of the game.
Absolutely. I agree. 100.
And it costs more. As a part no one said, it costs more when you just do shit like that. Oh, sorry. You do stuff like that. And and again, trust me, I have clients that I got one that's got whacked over the head just 2 days ago for moving forward with stuff without making sure all the paperwork was right. And then it ends up costing you more in the end, a lot more.
you know, if I could add one caveat to that, you know, the business of music, you know, it's a glacier thing, but it also moves in spurts. Like things can happen at a slow pace. You know, an artist, songwriter, they develop at a slow pace and they feel like, oh, it's never going to happen. But they make inroads and they take steps. And then all of a sudden, you know, they make a decision, like Dimitri saying, you know, that may be rash. And now all of a sudden they have a ton of people attached to their song, you know, maybe they decided to go the route to leverage some part of their catalog against, you know, a better move as they, you know, so because it's all about a check. So they're chasing a check and they're trying to make a better move, whether it be, oh, I'm going to give up my performance money for a year, you know, and during that period of time, their biggest record ever comes out. You know, it's about patience and it's about doing good business. Like Khris said, and being smart and recognizing that the music business is a marathon. I've been in this business for 30 years, folks. It's a marathon. You gotta take your time. You see a lot. And if you're smart and take your time, especially when you're dealing with copyrights, you know, it's like buying a house. A copyright long-term will take care of a lot of things. Trust me.
Just if it becomes a hit. And I
Even
think
if it doesn't, I mean, there's a lot of ways to use music. You know, I've got copyrights that you never heard of, you know, that have been used in consumer products companies, been placed in film, television. I get a license on something, you know, that, you know, you're like, oh, it's background music, but yo, I just made 30 grand on it. So
Yeah, I did the down payment on my house off a secret deodorant commercial.
there you
You know, it was like, wow, okay.
Goes back to the very first question that you asked, Torrance. It's a business. And once people understand that, and everybody's chasing the glory and all of that, but when you focus on business over music, you know, the music is going to take care of itself. The talented people, the Kanye West, the, you know, the BB Kings, whomever, they are going to emerge. They will rise. They are the cream. We're going to discover them. Okay. And I know there's some guy toiling away like, oh, I'm in this room right now. Nobody's called me yet. Well, guess what? All you got to do is keep working. If you keep working and put it out there in the universe and do the right things, title register, copyright register, guess what happens? One day your glory will come. And being impatient is like you waiting for the light to change and you end up in an accident. So you better stay focused is what I'm trying to say.
a lot of sound advice here. To the audience, our esteemed chancellor just walked in. Did you want to address the audience?
Well, I just want to say good afternoon. I've been watching from different places, but I had to come into the central headquarters, man, with all these great things, and I see some people I recognize. And let me just say this has been a great panel. I've been getting great comments and a great panel and a great day so far. I've got a little bit more to go, but a great day so far. So again, I'm just so happy that we could bring such talented people and knowledgeable people together to have a very great discussion that's being shared with hundreds of folks who could not have been able to access this kind of information. And I want to thank Marlon Dickinson and Tynes and Cedric, all because this is student-led. This is what we mean by student leaders. Lawyer leaders, student, they the ones that came up. I'm just the guy behind the scenes, but they came up with the idea and they put all of this together. So again, great.
Thank you so much, Chancellor. So hopping back into the discussion, I think we are all in agreement that the music business begins with the creation of a musical work, or as Mr. Jackson says, a song. So how important is it for recording artists to become familiar with copyright law and just overall industry asset management practices?
We'll let the lawyer take the first.
I'm a lawyer and I do entertainment law and I also do talent management. So I'm like right there in the middle of of my opinion on this question you have. I believe that everyone should know what they're doing and be as informed as they can be. I'm not so certain that every artist needs to know copyright law to the extent of an attorney, but they should know generally if, you know, the general principles. If you didn't make it, don't put it out. If you didn't, if the paperwork's not cleared, follow the advice of your team, your lawyers, your management. Otherwise it's going to cost you more in the future. Not even just money. Sometimes in the music business, physical stuff happens. I haven't heard anybody say that yet, but some physical stuff happens in music business, at least on the hip hop and R&B side. Khris was down there, you know, in Nashville with the big pop stars that they roll different over there. So I guess my answer is take it very seriously, know as much as you can, but at least the general principles, which are, you know, if you're ripping a song off the internet and you didn't pay or reach out to the person and get at least a license, even just a general license for $40, $50, that's copyright infringement. You can lose it all. Just know your bare minimum. Don't steal from people.
Well, I agree with the lawyer in the room. Never steal. Again, it goes back to the first thing that I said. It all begins with a song. So if you respect that somebody created something, you know, in terms of learning about the legal side of it, it's business. So for me as a publisher, I speak to lawyers every day. I deal with lawyers every day, whether it be a licensing situation or, you know, trying to recapture a copyright. So I've been forced to learn about the statutes, and the things that people fail to learn can come back and cost them a lot of money. And if you're unable, well, I used to say, and there's probably some songwriters in the room, so don't take offense, but I used to say writers don't read. So I'm a publisher. It's incumbent upon me to translate. So I made sure that I knew as much about the law, because copyright is federal law, and it's, you know, it's the statutes are there. So Dimitri spoke about an infringement situation. You know, back in the days when I represented, you know, Marcus Miller and some pretty big songwriters, you know, when people would steal from them, it become a big thing. You know, I mean, when you can prove infringement, it's a $250,000 fine for each infraction. And, you know, some of these cases have gone into the multi-millions, into the tens of millions. So my partner was involved with the early days of the Robin Thicke and situation with the Marvin Gaye estate. So, you know, these things can go left quick, and never steal. So ultimately, knowing the law, it's just like, if you're going to drive a car, you should know some law. You know, like don't run the red light. You know,
the general principles: don't run red lights. It says 35 miles per hour, don't go 50.
There you go.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I also actually I personally looked at it also from a different standpoint. So like, I feel it's important, especially because a lot of, again, going back to artists and creatives who are just starting out, I feel like one general mistake that we all, you know, are guilty of making sometimes is undervaluing and underestimating our creativity, and also just how far that can go, or just how far someone else will go to try to, you know, take that away from us. So I feel like with creatives who are undervaluing and underestimating themselves, they're like, man, nobody's going to take this from me, or nobody's going to, you know, try and steal my song, or like, I'm just, you know, some small kid from God knows where. But, you know, and then those same people, you know, get upset when they don't like cover and protect themselves and their assets, and then hear their song on the radio by X, Y, and Z, and just like, this is my, so like if you don't want anyone to even remotely go about like trying to take credit for your concept, your lyrics, your production, your anything, it's just as valuable for you, for the artists to want to protect themselves and their assets. I mean, and this goes like all the way back, because like Congress didn't even think that, you know, artist sound recordings were worthy of federal copyright protection until 1971.
Right.
And even when that was covered, you know, that only counted for sound recordings that were made then and after. So just think about all of the music before 1971 that, quote unquote, they wasn't deserving of federal copyright protection. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to use that now.
Well, we also have another almost attorney in the room, because Mr. Riddick Tynes is actually in law school as well. So do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think they covered all the bases. I mean, 2 points, and everybody in here, because, you know, Naya deals with coordinating and dealing with producers and writers. James deals with publishers. I mean, other publishers and writers, and Dimitri obviously deals with everybody. But I think one thing that, you know, being in law school, and I'm finishing up this year, and I think one thing I really learned is that the mass population, and I'm not trying to be crude when I say this, but people are dumb, and that's why we have attorneys. There would be no attorneys if people weren't stupid, and that's just the reality of the situation. And what I mean by stupidity or ignorant, I mean by in the sense of just not knowing, and they just don't follow through with stuff. And so
reckless, and they intentionally just don't.
Yeah, with malice and right. But you learn that in your first year tort class. Man, dang, people are dumb. Like, damn, you know. And so I think that, like you said, it's learning, like they were saying, is learning the general ideas about it. You know, don't steal. Don't put music out without making sure all the writer splits are done and everything's done. But a pivot I want to make to everybody out there in law school is this. Yo, you guys, I have a lot of friends that are sports agents, right? And, you know, they watch these kids, and black sports agents, you know what I'm saying? So, but they watch these kids from when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, and they make relationships with their families. They make, you know, so by the time, like, one of the homies had a number 2 pick, and he was 28 as an agent, 27 as an agent, just graduated from law school and was repping it, you know. So I think for us as young law students, it's very important, if you want to rep artists, start making those relationships now while you're in law school. You know what I'm saying? So when you graduate and your boy that you've been managing or rep, you know, obviously you can't rep him as an attorney because that you're not licensed yet, but you built that relationship. He might be the next Chance the Rapper, or he might be the next whatever. And then now you already have a relationship and he trusts you. You know, you look at LeBron James and you look at how he employed Rich Paul, you know, who was his friend from childhood. Maverick Carter, who was his friend from childhood. You know, these are black men looking after black men, and vice versa. It can be the same thing with black women looking after black women, or black women looking at black men looking at black women, whatever. But find those artists young and get your imprint on there, so you can, you know, you got a crew. And that when you come out, you're not going to work for the white man at some firm being paid, you know, $75,000 a year and, you know, $500,000 in debt. I don't know how much Southern costs, but Loyola is a lot. So, so it's like, and I went after I was successful. You know, that was a conscious decision. Like I was paid, I was good, I owned my home, did my thing, you know, and it was a conscious decision for me to go to law school for personally for me, but for you guys that are doing it as a career, find those artists early and get involved early, so that when you graduate, you got stuff going, so that you add value when you go to a firm. You're like, hey, I got Chance, or I got, you know, Summer Walker, or whatever that new version of that will be, you know, because you can even go to a label and pay off your law school if you do your situation right. You know, you sign the artist to you. So yeah, that's my advice.
Great information. Can I get someone, maybe one or two of you, to just quickly detail the role of a songwriter, a composer, a producer, and a publisher, because there's a lot of misconception out that all that is one and the same. One of the biggest debates that's had, and I understand where it stems from, you know, the urban side of music, but a lot of people feel like just if you made the beat, then you're 100% going to be credited as a producer, and that's not always the case. So kind of talk about those roles for me.
I look at it like this. A composer and a songwriter, to me, are synonymous, right? If you add anything to the track or anything lyrically or melodically or musically, you are a songwriter. This gets more nuanced with drums, right? Like if me and Naya have a song that we've done and it's all the way done, and then Torrance comes in and adds, you know, a 808 and some hi-hats and some kicks and snares, I would consider that, like in the olden days, that's just additional production, or production he'd get his producer fee. I wouldn't say he's entitled to the copyright. However, most producers now are writing the music for the track, if that makes any kind of sense, right? Like it's all kind of happening in the room. But I think, you look at the David Fosters, where you have somebody like Diane Warren that wrote a whole song on piano, and then he comes and he arranges around it. You know, that's all work for hire. He's not entitled to the copyright on that. That's like, okay, you got your $50,000 check as a producer, but Diane keeps her 100% of her publishing. But now it's it's harder to do that, because if somebody produces on it, they're going to want to take a piece of the pie, right? Like, I'm trying to think somebody who's like 100%er, right? Like, like Labyrinth. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Labyrinth, but like he's 100%er, writes and produces and does music and the lyric and melody.
I would say Corey Rooney,
right?
Who's my songwriter for years. He and Prince Marky D from the Fat Boys, when they first started, and I put their studio together for them and got them with Kenny Mike Silas as their lawyer, and just did everything for them. Then when Andre and them signed Mary J. Blige, and everybody was running around trying to find the right production team, once I got them in the once I got her in the studio with Mark and Corey, I ain't let her leave, and then eventually I signed Mary too. So I was like, I knew what I had. But Corey, eventually, he branched off. He's 100%er. But, what is a songwriter? You start there. There's producers like David Foster, and back in the days there was, Paul Reiser and guys like that who would add additional production, and Quincy, Quincy's the quintessential. Everybody wants to be Quincy Jones, where you could take anybody's song and make it better. But you see, Quincy learned to get a piece of that pie too as a songwriter. But I don't know how many millions of dollars he's made as a producer, but the question about what is, who's the composer, the way it used to be broken down was there was a guy who composed the music, and then there was a melody and lyricist. Okay. You're taking it back to the Brill Building days, but it's involved to so much more, and that's all technology. As technology advances, there's going to be changes, because people are writing. It's like we're collaborating in this symposium right now. There's songwriters who right now in the studio. One guy's I represent Solid Productions, which are out of Denmark. And these guys, they worked, God rest his soul, with Eazy-E when he was alive, and they worked with Ice Cube, while they were overseas. They were sending them tracks back in the days, and then, they were early with the technology. So, it changes. Who's a songwriter these days? It's anybody that contributes to a track, or in some form, fashion, whether it be with a hook. There were certain people. God rest his soul, Barney Boneyard Perkins, who was a great engineer who worked with Ellie and Babyface back when they were in Ohio. They used to come up to Detroit to the United Sound Recording Studio, which is, so I mean, that's taking it way back. But, Barney would sit there and say, yo, this song is good, but y'all need a bridge, There were like specialty bridge writers. Like there was like a guy who could write the bridge, who could make the change make sense, you know. But you know, and you got guys who just specialize in writing hooks. You know, I remember when I first met Gordon Chambers back in the day. You know, he was working as a writer at Essence magazine. You know, before he became a songwriter. He used to come around writing stories on people, and he'd sit in the studio with me, and he'd be humming, and I was like, man, that's dope. The next thing I know, you know, he's writing songs, you know, and you know, that's the way it works. You know, songwriting is you know, we hum something today, and a musician hears it, and he takes that melody, and everybody could be a songwriter. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But not everybody could be a dope producer. Producers, we're living in the golden age of producers right now. Okay, it's all about being a dope producer who could turn something that sounds good into something that's great and palatable that could be digested by the masses. And that's how you make money.
Awesome, really great stuff. We're going to kind of move through because we're getting close on time here. Miss Fleming, this is kind of related, but kind of not, but I think it's very important. So please talk to us about your involvement inside of the youth task force at a Universal Music Group.
Yeah, of course. So I am currently one of the team leads. The way we split up the youth task force, which basically consists of 18 to 24-year-old UMG employees, both at labels and with their college and lifestyle marketing representatives team 1824. I serve as one of the team leads, one out of two of the team leads for that group. Some stuff that we're currently working on, definitely regarding spearheading the Jacob Blake situation, and how we can not only change like the way that the company views everything that's going on in society nowadays, but also finding our ways to approach the masses about it and let them know that we are here and trying to solve everything that's going on. And also, especially with voting, we definitely want to make sure that everyone is encouraged to vote, especially with this upcoming presidential election, as well as the local elections that are also just as important. So we're currently definitely working out a way to figure out how to get all of that information out to people, especially those who are of our age, 18 to 24-year-olds, because we have a lot more power than we think.
Wow. And that's very powerful, just to know that one of the biggest companies out there is taking time to do that, and that you're a part of it. Mr. Riddick Tynes, you're no stranger to being a creative maven, and you know you've worked with the people in the highest echelons of the music industry. So quickly tell us about your studio process and give some tips for songwriters and producers who are trying to break in. What things can they do to get noticed and get those placements?
Wow, it's a loaded question. I think the main thing, you know, obviously if you're to this point, your writing is good. I think there's a, you know, to me, what separates the the people that get on the hits and the people that get on the consecutive runs, it's relationships, man. I think at a certain point, you know, there's God-gifted writers who are just like phenomenally, just like unbelievable. Oh my gosh, I don't understand how they came up with that. But most people are just like, it's like when you get to the NBA, everybody's kind of like on the same level, and it's like one LeBron James, one Giannis, you know, one Kawhi, and everybody else is kind of really in the same, you know, tier. I think it's about building relationships, and I think it's also about mentorship. I think that like you're only as good as your boss, right? Like you're only as good as who was your boss. Who you learn from is how good you're gonna be. If you learn from shitty people, you're gonna be a shitty person. If you learn from people who are awesome and that can teach you great, skill sets and great relationship building techniques, then you're gonna have, more than likely you're gonna have a great career. I think that like when you look at like the biggest producers, Pharrell came up under Teddy. Now, say what you want, Teddy's a phenomenal producer. Pharrell got game from Teddy. Pharrell takes that, he's birthed Tyler the Creator. You know what I'm saying? And everybody, and my whole generation of music, right? Like everybody looks up to Pharrell. So I think it's just more focused on mentorship. And I think that's the same thing about like interning, right? Like don't just intern at places that are going to have you push paper. Intern with people or places that can give you real opportunity and hands-on experience. I think, if you get into a place where if you're at a label or working under a producer or a writer and they're just kind of not really allowing you to see the experience, I think you should dip. I think you should say, okay, I appreciate it. And then go on to somebody that's going to be able to get you hands-on experience. I think people waste a lot of time waiting for the crumb to drop when there's people out there like, when I first met Babyface, I was 17, played up some tracks and he was like, all right, next month come in, you can work out the closet. And I was working out the closet at the studio and I'll blare my music. Mary J. Blige walked by. I'll be blaring my music just loud, just so she could hear it, looking out the window or, looking out the closet. It literally like a closet, like the size of a janitor closet. And from there, opportunities right there. And if I can see the opportunity, then I can grab it. So that eventually led into, stuff. But that's my advice. I hope that helped.
Absolutely phenomenal. Real quickly before we go to the audience, because we are really pressed on time, Mr. Hurt, just your experience is taking artists who are independent and moving them into a major label system. You understand that from the ground up. So just quickly tell us about the pros and cons when you look at staying independent versus taking that major label deal.
Sure. I say, first of all, for people who may or may not know this, independently, you can make a ton of money. You really, really can. I have artists that are independent. I have artists that are at majors. I have artists that we transition from independent to major, like Torrance said. I think when you get ready to make that transition from independent to major, it's only when you have built a fire big enough to warrant the bag that you want so that they throw the gas on it and it goes. My experience is that when you're in the label system, it doesn't change much. You do get some money, but your team, your management team behind you is still extremely crucial in moving you along. And that comes from, again, the independent to pushing you to being at the major. And then when you're at major, it's still the same thing. You're still pushing. The majors are just, they get you into the radio for sure. My experience has been that as independent, it's very hard to get into radio, but on the major side, it's a lot easier. There's all types of incentives they provide when you're on the major label to get you onto the radio that I think the smaller independent situations can't pull off. But I think it's all about timing. People are so excited to be on a signed artist and don't really know what that means. That can really be bad for you. You can be locked up. You can't release music when you want to release it. You're at their whim, especially if you're not, again, if you're not a big independent artist when you sign with the major, because then when you're a big independent artist signing with the major, you have a lot more leverage. You can get the deal terms that you want. You get more creative control. So I always warn people against rushing to try to get a deal with the major until your situation is right, because then you can dictate the terms.
Right.
Great advice there. Taking a question from the audience, Brandon Weber asked, which publisher do you prefer? And I'm assuming he probably means which pro do you prefer? And then goes on to ask, how does streaming impact your agreements moving forward? And what do you see as the next disruption in the industry? Anybody?
I take my favorite publisher is Reservoir. That's where I'm at. That's a plug. That's a shameless plug. They gave me a bunch of money, so I got to plug them. But I think streaming. I mean, my career was kind of birthed in the streaming era. I mean, I started professionally. I got my first major placement 2011, but my biggest thing, the Ariana stuff was 2013. So I kind of was birthed in the streaming era. So with James and Dimitri, like, I don't know what, mechanical money looks like from actual, selling 10 million albums. All I know is streaming and sync, that kind of stuff. So for me, streaming, I had some independent artists and like Dimitri was saying, I own the masters 100%. So it pays well. I mean, you're getting about $5,000, $7,000, $8,000 per million streams. So, I mean, you get somebody that got 100 million streams, do the math, you're making some bread. I think, what was the last part of the question that you were saying, Torrance?
What do you see as the next disruption in the industry?
Oh, it was about how the disruption. But to go back to streaming, what I was going to say was, for me, streaming has actually been kind of cool because on top of that, but as a producer, I've been able to like negotiate deals with like basically saying, okay, if a record, let's say they don't have the budget to pay, they only have, let's say the fee is $30,000, they only have $8,000. Okay, it's like, all right, cool. If the record hits 10 million, then y'all got to pay another 7,500, and every 10 million after that up to 100, 100 million, you got to pay 7,500. I've had records go viral on TikTok, and I didn't even know, and woke up and the joint was at 75 million hits. And it's like, oh damn, we done made more than we would have got on production fee off of TikTok. Thank you, TikTok. So it's allowed people to get nifty and shifty with it if you creative with making money, if you know how to handle it. The biggest disruption I see, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, maybe Dimitri or James or Naya might know from.
The biggest disruption to the music industry, I think, is going to be artists starting to stay away from the major labels. I think that's going to become a big problem, especially if a lot of them start doing it, especially if the big artists start doing it, then it could have a trickle-down effect on everyone else. It already kind of is. Now people are like starting to demand like their masters, like Khris was talking about. People are just getting more hip to the game, really, and starting to just really be aware. And I think that's the biggest disruption. Like I saw somebody, who was it? I think it was Drake. It was Russ. Russ made some comment about Drake. Like, Russ said, I'm not going to get into the system anymore. And, if Drake were to do it, and I wonder, I do wonder. I'm sure it will have some trickle-down effect that will affect. My man, James, what you got? What you think?
Well, I believe that technology is going to keep pushing the envelope. I think the more transparency we get, the better the net that's out there to capture these streams and get the income to the creatives. The technology and the creatives are going to collide, and what we're going to see, the whole effect about people running away from majors, that's going to be short-lived. Some people are going to do it. But here's what's happened. It's like America. America was built on the back of slaves. We got a long way to go. It's going to be some integrated. It's going to have some integration to take place. What we need to do is have more people of color on the business side. And you don't have to be the head of business and legal like Jeff Harleston. We need folks in the spot who are going to be coordinators, who are going to, from every level. And I've done everything in this business. Okay. I started out, I used to work for Procter & Gamble. I had a real job, I worked for Procter & Gamble and launched liquid detergent, guys. So that's how far back I go. Okay. I've been around for a while. Okay, I just celebrated my 60th birthday, so God is good. So I've seen a lot of change.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you very much. I've seen a lot of changes, so I think the next disruption, the whole move away from majors is going to happen. but majors have so much leverage with all of those masters. And as Ms. Fleming correctly pointed out, you know, what we need to see are more people of color advocating, whether it be with BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, get on the advisory boards, get out here and talk about ownership and control. But the majors had that on lockdown. That's the reason why copyright law didn't go back, you know, to the 50s. And trust me, you got to think about this business of recorded music, the configuration changes, and now it's in the atmosphere. Back in 1992, I did a conference in MCA Records auditorium in New York City about the fact that where we are right now today in the music business is where we were going to be. And I was like that angry black man yelling, standing on top of a table yelling, listen, why the hell do I have to run down over here to MTV and beg them to play, Diggable Planets, or beg them to play, Prince Paul's latest creation from Doodle Man Records? Why I gotta beg them? That as weird as that sounds, those are the people that gave Tyler the Creator and all those guys the ability to be weird and different in hip hop. You know what I mean? The early days of hip hop. I begged Universal at the time. I was like, dude, y'all own a film studio. Why don't y'all just launch your own damn satellite? The hell with MTV, And then I started thinking about it. I said, technology is moving so fast. This is before, remember, back when I started in the music business, there was no computers. There were no computers on everybody's desk. Okay, so, I mean, just think about it. Everything was getting typed up. POs were being done. The biggest technology thing we had happening was when there was a new Neve board put in the studio. Okay, or there was, we were using car services. That was our technology to get across town so we could get the producer and the songwriter together. So I have seen massive changes. I believe that the leverage that the labels have is going to continue to allow them to be around for a long time. And I think that with technology companies like Tencent coming in and throwing around tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, it's all about the catalog and leverage. And the catalog that Universal have, they can't even, Def Jam doesn't have, they can't exploit all of that stuff. They're not doing it right. So the changes you're going to see is technology allowing and pinpointing and more focus on finding the consumer, getting the music to them so that you can wake up in the middle of the night from a TikTok and just discover you made a ton of money. There's going to be a new version of that. And it's going to push it further. And it's going to, they have all of our information, so they know what we like, people. So that's why we need more accountants, more product managers, more publishers, more lawyers.
I think off of James's thing, I think the thing that, from what I got from it was that, infrastructure, right? Like, you can be independent, but if you don't have no infrastructure, if you don't have the accountants, the attorneys, the publishers, the people that can go up and do it, then I mean, being independent is great, but it's you still need somebody to push you to get on radio. You still need somebody to push you to get you on, Jimmy Fallon or whatever TV show or the late night show or SNL, whatever. And you still need that infrastructure, and the labels have that by, in a tiger grip. So, yeah, I don't know. I think they'll be here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both Dimitri and James. I was actually also going to say that I think the biggest disruption will be that artists and creatives are going to steer away from the major labels. But in addition to that, I agree that the leverage that they have is crazy. I mean, and not even just from that, but I feel like people are so small-minded, like they don't even think about like the fact that these major labels have relationships with people internationally. Like the international visibility that you can get from being with a major label is beyond me. Like, I don't believe in doing anything mediocre or small-minded. So I'm not going to limit myself to, I'm not going to limit myself to just, wanting to be known in the States. Man, America's for the birds. I'm trying to be known, you know, like all across the world, especially, you know, if I really have something to say, I'm gonna want everybody to hear it. So why not even take it into consideration? But I will also strongly advise that Dimitri had a very, very good point when he said that it's so important to make sure that you have your own ish together. So, you know, you can go about like creating your own terms, and especially in deals and stuff. Khris also talked about that, but yeah, leverage is crazy. James, I think you might be right. I think it'll definitely happen, but I think it will be short lived as well, as people start like thinking about the different leverages and stuff that they could add.
Well, guys, unfortunately, we are way over time. We have another panel starting in about 10 minutes. I want to thank each of you on behalf of SUOC, our esteemed chancellor, the CLE department. It's just phenomenal to have you guys here and to just spread all of this great information. Just can't say enough about how great it is to have this discussion. So thank you so much. And I think there's a small break room or something, because there's a bunch of other questions. If you guys have time, please go over there and talk with some of the audience that just really want to get to know more. It's just awesome. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Our next panel coming up is going to be Women in the Industry, and it starts at 2:30.
Thank y'all so very much. Khris, I did get your address. It just came at like 1 o'clock this morning. I missed it somehow. I don't know how.